So we're really thrilled to welcome to Iowa City some of our stars. Actually, they're all stars of different sorts. First, I'd like to introduce Mary Morten. Mary is the director and producer of Woke Up Black. She is a filmmaker, activist, obviously, consultant, and is committed to social change through video and film development. Her background includes 20 years of executive leadership at nonprofits and mayoral appointment by Mayor Richard M. Daley in city government. She is the immediate past director of the Office of Violence Prevention for the Chicago Department of Public Health and has also served as director for the Chicago Commission on Human Relations. She has developed films around policy initiatives and women's rights for several clients, including Pillars, Chicago Foundation for Women, and the Illinois Department of Employment Security. I'll just stop by saying that she has a BA in Communications from Loyola University of Chicago with a concentration in radio and television, and we welcome Mary. Some of you, no doubt, recognize already Morgan Price from seeing her around campus. I know I do. She grew up in an affluent western suburb of Chicago and was in her second year of college at the University of Iowa when Woke Up Black completed filming. While being raised to be a strong black woman by her parents, and we know this because they said that in the documentary, she lived the majority of her life in situations where she is the only African American or one of a few. I'm actually going to ask her to update you, so I'm not going to read the rest, and I'll move on to Ace. But we should clap for Morgan. So we've also met Ace Hilliard, and Ace is a self-identified genderqueer youth who struggles to maintain relationships with members of their family who do not understand and are not supportive of their gender identity. When Woke Up Black was released, Z was beginning her first year of college on a full academic scholarship. And I'll stop there and let her update us as well and move on to our last guest for the evening, Carter Tindell-Hall. They love you so much, they don't need anything else to know. So Carter Tindell-Hall was adopted by 2 African-American gay men when he was 10. As the oldest of 8 children, he was bounced around in foster care for several years. During filming for Woke Up Black, Carter was finishing up his last year of high school while balancing his class studies, sports, that was the thing on the stage, was the sports, right? And family life and trying to figure out his future. So we welcome Carter as well. So I actually want to start by asking each of our 3 documentary subjects to update us in your own words as to what you're doing today since the ending of the filming. Morgan, why don't you go ahead first?
Sure. I am currently a second-year master's student here at the University of Iowa.
So you have to speak into one of those mics.
Okay, sorry about that. I am currently a second-year master's student here at the University of Iowa. I'm studying epidemiology with a focus in injury epidemiology. My real passion lies in vehicle safety and human factors. So I just got back recently from a trip abroad. I was living in Sweden for about 3 months working at Volvo, and it was a fantastic experience. Everything here, academic-wise, I mean, I'm just living life and really, truly enjoying my career and my academic experience.
Okay. Ace. Okay. Now, we really can't clap after everything everybody says. I promise you'll get a chance to clap as long as you want at the end. So, Ace.
So as of August 7th, I graduated after spending 5 years at UW. with a degree in community and nonprofit leadership and general studies, which is completely different from the film. I am taking a year off. I am mourning the death of my grandmother, who passed away a week after graduation. With interest in education, community nonprofits, and restaurant management, I'm spending this year just trying to get everything together and trying to figure out what path to actually want to take. Since in undergrad they make you believe you can do anything, but in real life you really have to choose one or two. And so I'm just really like winding down from spending a very hard 5 years at UW.
All right, and finally, Carter.
Well, as of May 26th, I graduated from Lafayette College. It's in Pennsylvania. Now I'm taking a sabbatical year, working part-time, studying for my LSATs, trying to decide which law field I want to go into. Leaning towards. So this past few months have been like a blur, trying to like balance working out, and I've been trying to join a rugby team as well. And that's about it.
Great. Well, I think what's really interesting is that you all seem to remember the date and perhaps even the hour and the second that you actually graduated.
Oh yeah,
That's an important date.
So I'm going to start with a question for Mary. What inspired you to make this film, and what surprised you when you were in the process of making it?
Okay.
Well, first, I just want to say, don't you be that close to the mic. I want to say thank you to everyone who helped us get here, particularly Leslie and Peter back there and the School of Public Policy and all the sponsors. This has been one of our best experiences. I keep saying that in terms of university screenings. We've screened really many places all over the country except for the West Coast. But someone just gave me a great contact for that today. And I just want to say thank you. So thank you very much for all of your work to get us here. And what inspired me was I was looking for, this is really my first major feature that's been on PBS, and I really wanted to do a feature of a larger nature. Feature is anything over 40 minutes, and 60 minutes is really the ideal length if you want it to be broadcast. In the past, I've done some shorts, and of course, I do films for my clients, but this was my first major feature. And what inspired me was a report, the Black Youth Project, that you see referenced in that film. The person who led that investigative report is a friend of mine, Kathy Cohen, out of the University of Chicago. And I thought, boy, wouldn't it be interesting to really sort of bring some of these stories to life? Because what we don't see, and that was part of the initial quote in the film, is that we don't hear from Black youth. We hear about Black youth. We hear people talking about what Black youth should do, but we don't actually hear from Black youth. And so, inspired by that report, knowing that the report was incredible, but a lot of people won't see that data report, right? How could we tell some stories? And so I set about looking for, and I didn't know if it was going to be 4 or 5 youth. I didn't really know. And we decided to make this film. I mean, part of the impetus was, again, the catalyst was the research report, but I really wanted to lift up the voices of, and that's what I do generally when I'm doing any kind of a documentary, folks we don't hear from on a regular basis. Just one other thing I'll add, someone told me that I picked really exceptional youth, and that's why this was being so well received. And my response was, they in fact are all exceptional, but they are not exceptions. We just don't hear these stories.
Right.
Yeah.
So for Morgan and Ace and Carter, I have a question, because what we saw up there on the screen was very revealing and at times very emotional, either on the part of emotions expressed by you or emotions expressed by your family members. What was the experience like for you filming this, and then since it's been filmed and shown in so many places, for you and for your family?
For me, it's difficult in the sense that I forget what I said so many years ago. And that really lives on because it was recorded. And I didn't think that I was going to be so honest. I think one of the biggest things for me is no one ever really asked me how I felt or what was going through my mind. And I got so excited that I let it all hang out. And for me, that's something that I was surprised by, but I'm glad that I did it. My family, everything that they said was true. Everything that I said was true. So although it's difficult for me to look back and to see how brutally honest I was, I still stand by everything that I said. And I'm really glad that it's out there because for me, those struggles are still struggles. And when I see the movie again or I talk about it, it reminds me of where I was and how far I've come.
To be honest, I thought that this was going to be a grad school project for Mary. To be completely honest. And so I had previously met Mary because I was on the board of 2 nonprofits when I was a senior in high school. And so I was able to meet Mary that way because she was a person that we had to interview to get the grant. And so I was kind of familiar with her. But, you know, when she asked me if I wanted to be a part of this project, I'm like, okay, why not? Partially because it wasn't until that I started getting involved with nonprofits that I was able to meet other people of different sexualities and different gender identities because I felt so alone, both within the house with my stepmom, my dad, as you all saw on screen, and just not seeing people that look like me or like identify as me. And so on camera, I had no idea how honest I was until I actually saw the film when it first came out. And I love how honest I was, probably because I never had an outlet to express all the things that I was going through and the thoughts that were in my mind, simply because, you know, you don't have people that you could trust so much that you would tell some of these struggles to just because, one, they also may be religious, and so you don't want them to be judging you because you value their friendship. And 2, you don't know if they will understand because when I express my identity of being genderqueer, they're like, oh, you're still a girl, right? When it's no, I'm telling you that I'm identifying as one thing. So don't tell me I'm something else that I'm telling you I'm not. And so it's just, I felt closeted in a way, even though I was still open. And this movie helped me become even more open. And as you can see in the film, like they talked to my parents, but they didn't do that until after I moved on to college. And so that was something that was probably one of the last things filmed. Just because for my personal safety and my personal well-being, I didn't want them to interview and have these questions while I was still living in the house with them. And so I was able to be honest with Mary because my parents had no idea that this was going on until they were asked to be filmed. I didn't let them know, I didn't tell them, none of those type of things. And so as I look back now, like Morten was saying, I was like, ooh, the struggle. You know, I've definitely come a long way with my education, with maturity, with being more confident within myself, and it's definitely something that I can be very proud of, you know, as I look back, especially today. So.
To continue the themes that were brought up by Ace and Morgan, the feeling of like not having a voice or not knowing what to say kind of resonated as well when I was deciding to partake. I had 2 fathers. I was adopted when I was 10, and I didn't necessarily like know what I wanted to do. I didn't. No one ever asked me like, what kind of family did you want to be in, or where do you want to sleep, or what food do you want, until I met my parents. And I don't know. I kind of felt like my story wasn't worth telling. That like when I got into high school, I started getting really good grades and I was good at sports. I started finding out more things about myself. I like found my family and my biological family. I found them on Facebook. It was kind of like, what do you want to do with your life? Like, what kind of message do you want to send? And like, finally, at this point in time, I had opportunity, and it wasn't like a burden or anything. I had the chance to give back. And I had 2 younger brothers that were adopted around the same age as me at the age of 10. And I kind of like wanted to give back to them. Kind of like set an example. They didn't know that I was doing this, but I kind of did it for them in a sense as well as for myself, because I wanted to represent my 2 fathers. Because like I don't know, I think it's more of a modern family now. Everyone thinks of like man and woman, but they don't think about the two fathers and two mothers and the things that they go through. Because I got into a lot of fights when I was in elementary school. I would fight on like a daily basis from the grades of 4th to 6th. I was in over like 60 fights. I'd either be chased home or almost jumped, or just fighting or arguing with my teacher, or just things of that nature. And I just kind of, I tried to like look past all that and go, yo, I'm gonna make a difference. My uncles used to always tell me that I was being groomed for greatness. And once I graduated from college, I was declared a educated black man. So.
Great. So, again, I'm going to stick with you guys for a little bit, then I'm going to come back. I have a whole list of questions for you, Mary. But since the film has been seen so widely, what's changed for you? What has the film done to the way you see yourself, the way others react to you? What has the film changed about you? I'm gonna pick so that y'all don't have to figure out who's first. So Carter, this time you're first.
Okay. I feel like just the fact that people look up to me, I found out. Like people will stop me on the train and say like, "Oh, I've seen the documentary, how inspiring," or "Oh, like now people don't see a bad thing. They're like, oh, your parents are so cool." Big Dad and Small Dad, I like those names, and it's kind of like bringing my intimate relationship with my family to a bigger scale, but not in a way that it's like more intrusive, but kind of just like showcasing. Like it's not the paradigm, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's inspirational. It's like it's unique, but like nothing else besides that has really changed. Like I still believe in my mind that my mantra is like to leave a legacy. So whatever you go into, you like leave your impact, leave your legacy. Like whether that's on the field, in a classroom, whatever you're doing, like just do it as good as you can, and just like leave a legacy. I know like in our rugby team, we were only Division II. No one really watched our games, but like we gave 110%, and like we dominated. And like now, like we're like known, but it's just like kind of like started when we were freshmen. We were like we wanted to like make a difference like on the field, and we all like we were all on dean's list in college, so we all like worked together outside as well.
So on a broad scale, people who know me on campus know I'm a very open person. So whatever question people ask, I'm always up for going in depth and like having a conversation and things like that. And so when a lot of my friends saw the film, that kind of put some of those stories that I've told of like my parents, like it gave a face to it. And they actually kind of got a nice insight to what it is. And so they understand that, no, I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not coming from a place of trying to make up struggles in order to fit in. Like, no, it's really a struggle. And I wasn't lying about that. And so to have it shown at my university and to have people still like recognize me, even though I walk around sometimes as an alumna, and ask for help when they are trying to, have these conversations with their parents when like I wanted to open up to them about their gender, sexuality, and things like that, and serve as a mentor in university housing for 2 years, doing exactly that. I think was probably one of the best things I've done in my undergraduate career, just because it gave those students who identified differently from, I would say, everybody else, they had a face at least, and they saw what it was that I went through, and they can relate, and even doing screenings, like a lot of the screenings, I've had parents come up to me and tell me about like the stories of like their son or their daughter who may be LGBT, and the struggles that they as a parent are having in self-deal when it comes to also being a very strong-minded person within their religion. And I guess just being a voice to the other side of what they may not be hearing from their child, who may be scared to talk to them about these things, because I know I was once in that position. I was definitely terrified of my parents. But me serving as a voice for their child, even though I may not know their child, I think means a lot. It can at least help that parent start working through and navigating the words that they say and like how they treat their child, even though they may not agree with them. And as far as like on a more personal level, I never came after my brother. And he texted me one day and was like, "Hey, you're on TV." And that, I think, was one of the scariest moments of my life because I never told any of my biological family about, me being LGBT. So outside of like my dad, my biological mom, and like my stepmom, so it was very nerve-wracking. And so I waited till after he saw it, and I'm like, what are you feeling right now? He was like, "So you don't like boys?" I'm like, "Nope, not at all." And he was like, "Oh, okay, so are you and your dad talking?" I'm like, "Nope, not at all." And then he just went off on like this rant about how wrong my dad was. And so it was that moment when I realized that I do have the support of my brother. And he learned a lot about me that he didn't know from that film. And so that brought us closer together as siblings who were very distant from each other. And as you all saw, I was a part of the sorority, and that my past was a part of me that I didn't too much like talk a lot about, just because I was always like in a leadership position. I was president for 2 years, vice president for a half a year as well, and so I was always more of trying to develop them and harness them, and like always trying to like really get them to open up and like get to know a lot about each other that I forgot to do it myself sometimes. And so we showed it on our campus. We showed it at a retreat that we had, and they understood me more, and they trusted me more because of that. And I think that this documentary has definitely let a lot of people that I definitely consider my chosen family know who I am, and that I am vulnerable and I am open, and I do have a past just like everybody else. And I think they really, well, not that I think, I know they respect me more for it. Because not only is it something that's like in my imagination, but it's something that they can see and something that's more tangible.
Great.
I feel exponentially more empowered than I had ever felt before. Just putting words to how I was feeling, the fears that I had, was something for me that was very difficult. Being an African-American woman in an affluent white society is not easy. And very small things bother you on a day-to-day basis. And being able to express that was probably the most fantastic thing that ever happened to me at that point in my life, because I was at a turning point. I was starting college. I was figuring out who I was, and more importantly, who I wanted to be. And putting words to these feelings was huge and absolutely crucial. So for me, the movie was a catalyst for personal growth that I didn't even really know I needed. And I am forever grateful to Mary for putting me in that position to figure out how to make myself a better version of myself. Okay. On a broader sense, the greatest thing that ever happened because of this movie is I got to go to the White House and meet the president, Mary. So that was the best thing that ever happened. But like all the personal stuff is important too, but I got you. That's it.
Okay. Sounds like you all became a little braver or a little something, more open because of this. So maybe you can tell us how well that stood you instead, being students at the very interesting and different places at which you were students. I know that both Morgan and Ace talked about being one of few students of color within your circle and even on your campus. I'm not sure if that was the same experience for you, Carter, but maybe you could all share what it was like being a student of color on a college campus. And Ace, this time, I'll make you go first.
So I don't know if Iowa is a school, but I had a Posse scholarship to go to UW, and so I had a group of 10 people that I was already that I was training with for a year before even stepping onto the campus of UW. And as much as I loved them, and and we were definitely a type of a support for each other. They weren't the support that I needed. I was ready to leave after my first year of being at UW. UW was very let's just say being like the only black student out of maybe 150 students, and every time a black question comes up or anything about the student of color population, you were like all eyes on me. And so having that much pressure, and then be sometimes being chased and like being called these different names, including like fag, like all these different things, and it was hard. And a lot of people in my posse, bless their hearts, like I love them, but a lot of them were religious, and so they would just tell me to suck it up. And like a lot of them didn't agree with my lifestyle as well, and so it was always like a little like tensions there. But to be honest, if I did not join my sorority, I would have left. My sorority, Sigma Lambda Gamma, was founded here, and it's actually, we have some members in the back, leadership, of our organization. Here we go. And we, it was multicultural. They accepted me for who I was. They believed in me. Like, they were the ones that I went to on campus when I was struggling. Like, whenever I just broke down and cried and I was just ready to leave, like, my personal mentor, she was the one that was like there for me to cry, and like she was the one that always gave me the encouraging words to just keep on pushing, and like when I didn't feel safe and I was in a particular area, she would get up and drop whatever she was doing to come get me and to like talk to me and stuff like that. And I feel like I've never had like a group of people to express so much love to me, even though they knew very little about me. And then all of a sudden they were part of this organization. And so when I met more people who was a part of this organization, I'm like, oh my God, like this is awesome. And so I started like developing relationships, and when I felt like these are the people that I wanted to be like. These are the people that can push me to be better than I was, and these are the people that would get me to stay. And once I joined, like it was my college experience turned completely different. I became more confident. I had a better network. I felt comfortable, and that was one of the first times on that campus that I felt comfortable. My second year of college, and they kept pushing me, and they are the reason why I stayed, because I was involved and because they gave me the love that I needed, that I wasn't getting from anywhere else. Even though there are other students of color organizations on campus, like my sisters loved me in ways that I don't think my parents even loved me, and that's not something that you can find everywhere.
Morgan. Okay. I, as you could see in the movie, am very used to being the only black woman or the only black person in the room, in the neighborhood. It's not out of the norm for me. So coming to Iowa didn't make me feel very uncomfortable. What was unique was, as an undergraduate here, I was a biomedical engineering student. So I was at a double minority. I was a woman, and there's just nothing but men, and I was a black woman. So that brought in a whole nother layer of meaning. And for me, instead of reaching out to people of my race, because there were so few, I think at my graduation, I could count on maybe one or two hands how many African-American people there were at my graduation. I reached out to the women. I lived on the LLC, Living Learning Community, Women in Science and Engineering. And the girls that I met there are literally still my best friends to this day. Just like Ace was explaining, if you don't have that support system, you're nothing. You are nothing without people who can help prop you up when you are literally on the precipice of what you feel like is death. And I am a drama queen, so I know that happens to me more than it does anybody else. But I really needed that. So I wished I had reached out more to people of color, because now I feel, as a graduate student, as you ascend the hierarchy of academics, the color falls away. And I am finding that as I progress, I need more women in my life. And I also need more African American people and more African American women that I can look up to and look at and say, I want to be like you. I have great mentors in my life, and I am forever grateful for everything that they have ever done for me. But now I need to transition into just to being a well-rounded human being and looking for someone like myself. So my struggle is still ongoing with that type of identity crisis, but I think it's on the up and up, more positive than it is anything else.
Last but not least.
I wasn't sure if you were finished.
No, I'm done.
You gave me that look.
Are you done?
I went to posse school as well, Lafayette College, but I wasn't a part of posse. I turned posse down in high school. I was always closely aligned with those that were in posse. I had some of my greatest friends that were in posse. At my school, it was predominantly white. It was a very rich school, like very preppy. They drove Lambos and Mercedes. Some guy came in with a helicopter. It was really, really rich. But I didn't really let that deter me from making friends or anything. I didn't really like make it one of my primary issues or concerns on campus. I kind of was like, oh, I'm here to get a degree, and like everything else is secondary. So like, I mean, I made friends across the racial divide, if you want to call it that. It was like when you went into the student center, Fahrenheit, it was like a dichotomy. It was like on one side of there, black students or the international students, and the other side was white students. They say like, granted, like if you walk into the center, depending on where you glance at first, is where you were like associated with. But me, I'm like, oh, what's up? Yo. Like, I mean, it was like, it wasn't really anything that was like a problem. I always like experienced backlash from being friends with both. Like I had to choose, but I never really grew up that way. Like my best friend Botal, he's from China. My best friend Joey, he's Puerto Rican. My best friend Adrian, he's French. My best friend Guillermo, he's Mexican. So like, I just kind of grew up around like different clusters of people. So that's what I was accustomed to. So when people started talking about, oh, do you care about black issues? Are you aware of black consciousness? And I was like, yes, I am. I'm so for it. But like, that's not like something that's like that I'm trying to get right now. I'm trying to worry about my studies, play sports, and kind of just have a good time. And I know like it was a very, very heavy issue on our campus because it was the issue of the swastikas. People were going around threatening people, and people were like dressing up and painting their faces black, dressing up as gangbangers with black paint and all that. And that was just a problem on campus. But we had such a small black community on campus that we felt like we didn't really have a voice. So that was just one of the lingering issues that continue to this day.
Okay, great. So if you are in the audience and you are a student, would you raise your hand? Okay, so trick question. This is a question you might not have heard before. One sentence, piece of advice for the students who are in the audience. One sentence, piece of advice for the students who are in the audience.
I know I'm first too.
Yeah, well, you are now.
Yes, Mother.
Darn it. Piece of advice.
One sentence.
One sentence. This doesn't count. I'm thinking. Just be yourself. Be confident. Feel empowered. And always aspire for greatness. Because if you try and be great, you may not be the best, but you will definitely be really, really good.
Okay. I'll allow semicolons.
Yeah.
It was definitely.
Carter.
I think I mentioned mine earlier. Leave a legacy. That's mine.
Okay.
I have a shirt that says it too.
And Ace.
My only advice would be to get involved and find your niche. That's important.
Okay, great. So Mary, I've saved some questions for you. And interestingly, the title of this is Woke Up Black.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see the stories and hear the stories, it's Woke Up Black and LGBT, or Woke Up Black and with a daughter and a criminal record, or Woke Up Black and struggling in college, or Woke Up Black and the son of two gay men. Tell us a little bit about the intersection and how that played into the story you were trying to tell.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was important to me, again, overall, to show voices that aren't generally heard from. And we have a lot of different examples of parents, as you've mentioned, which was really by accident. I was really focused on the youth and their stories, and I knew I wanted to have a diverse group of young people represented. It just turned out, for instance, that we have all these different examples of fathers in the film. And that, again, was really not intentional, because initially we weren't going to have any of the parents in the film, but we thought it was really important to show sort of where these folks, these young folks came from, because it did have a huge impact on them. And I think, the fact is that there is a great intersectionality that we don't talk about a lot. Class, race, sexual orientation, gender identity, that all these pieces work together and are important to look at that sort of intersectionality. It really is difficult to just sort of look at race or look at income or look at gender, but that they really do overlap. And certainly someone's concerns, and I identify with, many of the young folks in the film for a variety of different reasons, but certainly being able to say, yes, we're Black, and we have these other identifying situations, demographics that really, in some cases, are helping to set us apart from other people. I thought it was an important message for people to see. We had people who said things like, we were at the University of Chicago, again, a standing room only kind of screening, and a community organizer said, I really am homophobic, and I know that. And this really made me understand what someone who is young and identifies, as LGBT is going through. And thank you. I had other young women say, I really just thought I needed to I needed to dance in videos. That was going to be what I needed to do to sort of get ahead. And I feel, like there's some other things I can do now. I've seen, so people have identified it within very different ways, and they pick different pieces. And I think that to me was just part of the mosaic that we were trying to show. And again, some of it was just it wasn't intentional, I have to say. It just happened as a result of bringing these 5 folks together. And I would love to just comment on where the other 2 folks are. Sheldon, who often does a lot of these screenings and probably has done more of them because he's in Chicago and has a little bit more flexible schedule, is now the executive director of a nonprofit. He's running Dovetail Project, and couldn't come because he's in session right now. He works with young fathers and is, doing extraordinarily well, getting national funding, local funding. He's a young executive director of a nonprofit. And Rosie, as you saw, was struggling with staying in school, and for a number of reasons left school and came back to Chicago, got back in junior college, but then had a family tragedy, which I should just mention, we're in the midst of filming the follow-up to this film. It's called Woke Up Black Again. Woke Up Black, period, again. Because people always want to know what's happening and where they are. And so Rosie, we've met several times, and she, her brother was shot and killed. And I have to say that it has, as you can imagine, forever changed her. She is not back in school, has really moved around a lot. It's been a very difficult time, and so we will talk about that in part 2. But at the end of the day, it really was about, not asking them to leave some part of themselves to the side and to bring all of that and whatever they were willing to share. Again, it was wonderful that they were willing to share so much. I didn't know them all. I knew Ace very, very little. I didn't know Morgan really at all. I really didn't know them, and so we developed a relationship over this time, and really have stayed in contact and become, part of each other's lives in many ways. And so that's been a huge byproduct.
Great. So, Mary, I'm going to stay with you. You've described what you were trying to achieve with your film. What is, for you, the most frustrating thing about the way the media portrays Black people in film?
Oh, we don't have enough time. We just don't even have enough time for that.
I said the most
right,
frustrating.
The most is that we don't let youth speak for themselves. That's probably the most frustrating. When we think about the Trayvon Martin situation, we think about what's happened in the last several months around Ferguson, but in particular around Trayvon Martin. I initially really kept saying, why don't we hear from Black youth? And that's why that particular quote was so important to me, because youth in general, and particularly Black youth, we just don't hear from them. And when I did my pre-production in New Orleans and in San Francisco, which is where we go and we look for, we were looking for our documentary subjects. We started with an interview with everyone. And they all had extraordinary ideas about how to solve problems that we hear about every day. They were resilient. They were hopeful. Some of the youth I talked with were frequenting a drop-in shelter in New Orleans. This is post-Katrina. And some of them were living on the street, but they kept talking about, making their parents proud and going back to school and then wanting to help other young people. And when do we hear that? So I think the most frustrating thing is that we don't hear from young people themselves. We don't hear their own stories. We're setting policy and making decisions for them without the benefit of their input.
Okay. And I'll ask the same question of the rest of my panelists. What is the most frustrating thing, now that you are a part of the media, what is the most frustrating thing for you in the portrayal of Black people in the media? Now you're all always looking for me. Morgan, go first.
I think the most frustrating thing is that how you said earlier that we are exceptional and we're very rare. That's not true. I am very, very normal. And there are a lot of other African American women, men, youth, just like me. But we hear about all the negatives. We hear about the murders and the thefts and the gang banging. And that's what's forced down people's throats. Not to mention, I said earlier that I was abroad. When I was abroad, I was surprised by the stereotypes that perpetuate, not just in the United States, but everywhere. Everyone was very nice. No sorts of, antagonistic personalities, but they thought that I was going to snap my fingers and roll my neck every minute. Like that, first of all, that's unhealthy. Second of all, I don't exist like that. That's not how I function. So it was very disappointing to know. It was very disappointing to see these very severe stereotypes of the Real Housewives of Atlanta and Basketball Wives. Like, that's what's on television in Europe. And that's what they think when I get there. So, for me, the media is huge. What we see is what we believe. What Facebook tells you is the Bible. And the fact that we are so negatively portrayed drives me insane, because every time I walk into a room, that's what I'm up against. Whether you want to believe it or not, everything that you see, everything that you read, that's what you think of me when I walk into a room. That needs to change, because quite frankly, I will fight against it, but sometimes you get tired. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, that's my biggest issue.
Okay, so I have to confess, even though apparently neck rolling is bad for your health, Ace, I fell in love when you said you worked that dress.
I honestly think that moment's gonna haunt me for the rest of my life. But I think the top thing that angers me about the media, not just about Black youth, but about all youth of color, is the questions that are being asked about the particular youth in question. For example, let's take what happened in Ferguson. Everybody was so concerned about if he was in the gang, if he stole something. There's always there had to be a reason why he was shot and killed. And then you have the New York Times, I think it was, that published an article that had very questionable language, but everybody was so concerned about the negatives about him, and they asked so many negative questions and wanted to make it that's the reason why he was shot and killed, and almost a validation of why a life should be took. When you have people who are white and they shoot up college campuses and they shoot up little middle schools and things of that nature, but they're on a roll student and it comes out of nowhere. Nobody's asking, they weren't trouble at all. Like, you know, all these like angelical, like heavenly type things that OMG, like this came out of left field. When it's like, no, you're just not paying attention. And it's so frustrating because it's like, I feel as a person of color that like one, like I have to fend for my own life against people who are supposed to serve and protect. And I feel that that's something that is caused by the media because, like, the media, I feel like if I was to die, they would try to find every bad thing that I've done and make that the reason why I died. When I feel that people who aren't people of color do not have to worry about that. Just because I feel that the media picks and chooses what questions they would like to ask, and whether they want to validate a death or make it seem like this person was so good and we don't know why it happened, and you know they should go to counseling. Meanwhile, we should be dying. You know, and it's that type of that ratio that angers me. And I think the media definitely needs like more education about like, okay, like how can we be more biased? How can we be less biased against the things that we are saying? Like, okay, if we're gonna find two people, a person of color and a white person, you know, who has done the same thing and things of that nature, like how can we create identical stories to tell about their lives, but don't make it seem that, you know, one was uncalled for while the other, you know, was okay, maybe he deserved it type of thing.
Carter?
I think the biggest thing that tugs at me is the miseducation of the media. I think like I'm gonna piggyback off of most of the things that have been said already, just because I think it's a pattern that has come up. I know like when my reference points are my little brothers. My middle brother's been shot 6, 7 times. Like we came from we have the same parents, but my dad's is a lawyer, my other dad's a business consultant, and instead of looking up to inspirational people, you look at those that are on YouTube or in the media like Chief Keef or any of the other ones that are like have this criminal mentality, or they've gotten their glamour through violent acts or whatnot. And it's just instead of trying to break that mold, that's what perpetuates throughout the media. And it's like it has such a firm grasp on the youth that you can't really break through. Like, because most people want to be LeBron more than they want to be Barack Obama, or they don't want to be a CEO. They want to do anything. They want to play football, play basketball, fast money, fast action, live or die fast, live young, or whatnot. That type of mentality. And I know, like, when I studied abroad in Madrid, in Spain, and I played football over there, it was just for fun. And we like traveled around to like Barcelona, Segovia, other places to play. And when I walked into the locker room, the first nickname that they came up with was Django. They started calling me Django. And I'm like, what? Like, what the? And I'm just like, you know, he kills everyone at the end, right? Like, I was like, come on now. Like, I mean, and then like, I did a service program to Madagascar. And like, instead of like, there was no negative portrayals. They're like, oh, we want to be Barack Obama. We looked up to him. And those type of depictions were increasingly more impactful from what I took away than those from like in Europe. Because I went to like Paris, London, Prague, Rome, all those other places. And it's just, I don't know, I found myself more frustrated that this is how we're seen. And it doesn't seem like it's going to change because you have like certain media outlets that it's like written into their contract that they don't have to tell the full truth. And like most people believe it because like it's on the TV. And when you try to have some form of an intellectual conversation with them, they're like, no, you're just wrong. No. And they're like, but the actions of a few affect everyone else, and that they should stay over there. One of my best friends told me that all the ghetto people should stay in the hood. They should not come over to here. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, baggy clothes. That's the criterion. If they wear baggy clothes, they can't be let into the club. I was like, dude, your clothes are baggier than mine. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, dude, I think I failed you as a friend because I've let you think this. And we've been friends for like 7 or 8 years, and this is what you're thinking. And I just don't know. I think it's very, very frustrating just because I have a 14-year-old brother, and he's like always on YouTube. And instead of like, when I ask him like, dude, why are you walking around like with a hoodie on? And it's like 9 o'clock at night, and it's warm outside. I was like, dude, don't do that. Like, put your head down, take your hands out of your pocket. Like, don't do certain things. And you have to like kind of show them that there's a certain way to act at a certain age, in a certain place, at a certain time, in a certain area. And it's just like, that's frustrating because they're not teaching him that in school or anywhere else. He has to learn that from home and from me. And I just graduated from college, and I'm trying to be the role model that he wants, but he wants to be ball his life and all those things. And I'm just like, dude, you need to like diversify what you want to be.
Just to interject, the fact that a person has to change how they act depending on where they are is a perfect example of what both biased stereotypes people have and what the media has done.
So there was actually a plan for getting questions, which I kind of ignored. That's on me. So I'm going to try and manage questions slightly differently. If you have a question, we have time for a few. I'm going to ask you to briefly state your question, and I'm going to emphasize the briefly part because I'm going to repeat your question, and I'm going to repeat your question in like 5 words or less. So if it's a long question, it's going to still be a 5-word question. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Okay, I see 1, 2, and 3. So we'll start down here. Number 1. So the question is, in thinking about the absence of Black voices, what about social media outlets as a way of trying to get the voices out there?
I'll just very quickly say I think it's great. I think that's why we've seen some of the coverage that we've seen about certain things that are happening in different communities is because the media is much more accessible. So I, for one, think it's a great thing.
Other comments?
I concur.
Okay. And the nods go on. So my number 2 was right there. Hi. So Morgan, what is a strong Black woman?
That's a very hard question. I think a strong Black woman is someone who is confident, no matter what, who is strong, resilient, who is literally a pillar. I have been around lots of strong Black women. Everyone in my family has impeccable strength. And to me, just being dynamic and having an air about you and always trying your very best, even if you're in the worst circumstances, that's what being a strong Black woman to me is all about.
So I'm going to interject. So what's a strong Black man? I was looking at you, Morgan.
Me?
Yes.
Jesus, I don't know.
Okay.
Get back to me in a minute.
You got okay, Carter. You got anything for that?
Everything she said was.
But I meant okay. And my number 3 question.
Carter, I was wondering if, well, first of all, I think your parents are clearly an example of a success story, being gay parents and raising a, an African American male. So I'm curious if, the fact that you grew up with 2 fathers had any kind of influence on your sexuality, and if that's too personal, you don't have to answer. And then the second part would be, just tell us if you think, if gay parents can also be very successful at raising a family. I think it's a very important question because public debate will soon center on whether, gay parents should be allowed to raise families without kids. And I think that's a solution for the problem of growth of family in the United States.
Okay, so there were 2 questions. They were related, so I'll let them both count. One is very personal, which Carter can choose to not answer, which is whether being raised by two gay men has influenced his sexual orientation. And the other is if he has any comments on the parenting abilities of same-sex marriage couples, because that is part of our current debate. And I get the sense that Mary wants to say something.
Carter, go ahead.
I don't believe that growing up with two gay fathers has anything to do or has impacted my sexual orientation in any form. I think that, I don't know, I like women, I like whatever. I mean, I think I've become more like relaxed about, oh, that's gay, or labeling anything, any particular behaviors as either or. I think my parents are very, very normal. We're regular. We have our struggles. We have our arguments. We have our nicknames. We have our family time. I got in trouble as well. I think they've set great examples. I couldn't go to sleep until I finished my homework. Sometimes that was at 3 o'clock in the morning. But I mean, look at me now, I guess. I mean, there's a great video on YouTube where this man he makes a statement about growing up with two gay moms. And at the end he says, look at me, he has a suit on, and he's like some wealthy lawyer or something. But just how he breaks it down is probably far better than I could.
Okay, so I think there's time for one more. 1.5 more questions. How about we try and get like 3 questions on the table, and we'll see how much time it will take to answer them. And your hand was first, so 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure we're going to get to you. No, 1. And okay, hold that thought. 2, your question? We're going to put them all on the table first.
Okay, I just want to say, Morgan, since you're here in Iowa City and you're a graduate, I want to say I'm very proud of you. But one thing I do want to ask you, because you've been here for 5 years and you say that you want to put yourself out there and know more about strong black women, I want to know, do you know any strong black women in Iowa City?
Okay, all right. 3. Okay, so the first question, which was another personal question, Ace, I leave it to you, is asking Ace, at what point in time did you actually recognize your gender identity? Second question was for Morgan. Morgan, who are the strong black women? You don't have to name me, it's all right, in Iowa City. And the third question is thinking about all the struggles that are in Chicago, particularly with youth and youth of color. What are some of the things that Mary might suggest that we could do in order to turn that around?
Okay, so growing up, I always felt different. I always never felt like I was supposed to be a woman per se, based off like the people that I've known in my life, but also felt like I didn't want to be a dude because, I don't know, I'm biased, I'm lesbian. So it wasn't until I was a sophomore in high school that I was opened up to other gender identities outside of being a woman and a man. And so after like investigating, like doing my own personal like soul searching type of thing, that's when I figured out that genderqueer was definitely the category that I should be in, because I didn't fit anything else. And even though I don't like putting labels on myself, I feel like that's probably the best one that would describe me, and not just a person who I want to have something to at least say that I am, you know, instead of just saying I'm a human, and like that's it.
All right, Morgan, on the spot.
Yeah, you were very dynamic with that question, so I'm very afraid to give you this answer. My fear has held me back, undoubtedly. Also, what has held me back is being an engineer and having absolutely no time for anything else. It's very hard to develop my social life when I am so busy. That paired with my crippling fear of not being accepted by my peers has completely just not. However, I am very hopeful for the future. I live with two very dynamic African American women, and that has completely changed my entire life. I'm forever grateful that I took, a big risk in moving in with two people that I don't know. I also have my professor here, who is the first African American female professor who I have ever had, and we just started class. She's absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait to see where this semester takes me, because I think that just these three small influences in my life could be really huge. And I'm working on it.
I will just say briefly that I think what I've learned from, not only the folks in the film, but just youth in general, because I do other work with young people, is that they need someone to talk to, and they need someone to mentor them. I mean, that sounds really simple, and they need a job. Let me just say that, right? One of the reasons why, youth are hanging out on the streets is because they don't have anything to do. They don't have anything to do. They don't have anywhere to go. They don't have resources in their communities. And it's not that, honestly, it's just not that complex. People need someone that they feel they can talk to. You heard, in a variety of different ways, people say, this is my chosen family. These are the folks that got me through. And as simple as that seems, many young people don't have that. We have a huge prison industrial complex. And we have many women who are now in prison for non-violent offenses when they should really be in some sort of, community-based program. They need to be in rehab, not necessarily in a prison. So we have all these women who are in many cases heads of households being taken out of the community. That has also been an impact. And so I think it's just, it's not there's some simple answers, but there's also much more complex answers that have to do with the criminal system, the legal system, I should say, and people getting access so that people are not locked away from their children and separated from their children. Many of the children in Chicago public schools there are a large number that have one parent who has been or is right now incarcerated. Huge numbers, right? This is the third largest school district in the country. And so there's work that needs to be done at the policy level, but even at the very sort of basic community level, we need to connect adults who care and will listen, not necessarily tell them everything they should be doing, why they're not doing it, how they could be doing it, right? But listen and support young people.
So unfortunately, because there's a lot more that we could say, our time has come to an end. It's really, really, really been transformative. Obviously, it's been transformative for members of the audience and transformative for a panel. Did you all notice how they were hugging each other and touching each other up? Obviously, you've made friends through this process, which is great because it's another part of your family and your support network. So I'm just going to ask you, after I say one last thing, to thank all of our panelists. But first, I just want to reiterate the advice. Let me see if I've got it right. Strive for excellence and do good. Find your network and your connections and leave a legacy. And that, I think, is a perfect way to end the evening. So thank you all for coming.